The invitation never came. I kept refreshing my phone, scrolling through messages, waiting for some kind of oversight to be corrected. Maybe a last-minute text from my mom, "Oh, Lucas, it was a misunderstanding. Of course you're invited." Or even a call from Dad with his usual gruffness, telling me to stop being dramatic and just show up. But nothing came. I should have expected it. The signs had been there for months, lurking in the passive-aggressive silences during family calls, the way my brother, Ethan, had stopped responding altogether. But I had convinced myself that no matter how much tension hung between us, family was family. And family didn't just cut you off. It wasn't until I saw the pictures, my entire family, gathered in Ethan's oversized living room, twinkling Christmas lights reflecting off their wine glasses, that the truth settled in like a heavy stone in my stomach. Everyone was there. My parents, my cousins, even Aunt Denise, who lived across the country and never traveled in the winter. Everyone. Except me. I stared at the picture for a long time, letting the sting sink in. Then, with deliberate calm, I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice filled with forced cheerfulness. "Lucas, Merry Christmas, honey." "Mom," I said evenly. "Did you forget to invite me, or was it intentional?" A pause. A long one. Then, a sigh. "Sweetheart, it's not like that." "Then what is it like?" My voice was cold now. "Because it sure looks like you all had a great time without me." She fumbled for an excuse, murmuring something about space, about how things have changed, about how Ethan felt it would be simpler this way. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a miscommunication. It was planned. I had been deliberately excluded. I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone tighter. "And you just went along with it?" She hesitated. That was answer enough. "I see," I said, voice hollow. "Well, Merry Christmas, Mom." I hung up before she could say anything else. For the first time in my life, I spent Christmas alone. No frantic gift wrapping, no pretending to enjoy my dad's dry turkey, no biting my tongue while Ethan made snide remarks about my selfish decisions. Just silence. At first, it felt unbearable. I stared at the perfectly wrapped gifts I had bought for everyone, gifts that now sat useless under my tree. I had spent weeks picking out things they'd love, meticulously making sure the kids got the best ones. I had gone above and beyond because that's what I did. Because I always showed up, even when no one else did. And for what? A part of me felt stupid, pathetic, even. I had been waiting for scraps of their affection, desperate for approval that had never really existed. But as the night stretched on, something shifted inside me. The silence, which had started as suffocating, began to feel like something else. Relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't stressing over them. No forced smiles, no guilt tripping, no being made to feel like I was always falling short. I was just me. And you know what? That felt like a gift in itself. I didn't expect to hear from any of them after that. I figured they had written me off entirely, brushed me aside like an expired membership to their exclusive little club. But 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from my father. "We need to talk. Meet us at the house tomorrow." Not a request. A command. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something in me wanted to hear what excuse they'd come up with, what justification they had for cutting me out like a tumor. Maybe, deep down, some stupid part of me still wanted them to fight for me, to say it had all been a mistake. So, I went. When I arrived at my parents' house, the air inside felt heavy, like walking into a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. My mother sat on the couch, wringing her hands, while my father stood near the fireplace, arms crossed. And Ethan, of course Ethan, was sprawled in the recliner, looking like the king of the castle. I stayed standing. "So, what is it you needed to talk about?" Dad cleared his throat, always the one trying to play mediator. "Lucas, we didn't mean for things to get out of hand." I laughed. I actually laughed. "Didn't mean for things to get out of hand?" I repeated. "You literally did not invite me to Christmas. You planned that. That wasn't some accident. That was a choice." Mom let out a breath. "It wasn't personal, honey." I scoffed. "Oh, really? Then tell me, how exactly does one accidentally uninvite their son from Christmas?" Ethan finally spoke, shifting in his chair with that smug expression he always wore when he was about to say something awful. Come on, Lucas. You act like this came out of nowhere. Maybe if you weren't so busy living in your own little world, you'd have realized that you've pulled away from us first. Pulled away? I repeated, narrowing my eyes. Because I bought my own place? He shrugged. Because you stopped helping. You used to be part of this family, used to pull your weight, but lately, it's like you don't even care about anyone but yourself. There it was. The real reason. It wasn't about me pulling away. It was about money. About how, after years of bailing Ethan out of his endless messes, paying off his debts, covering his kids' tuition, even handling his mortgage at one point, I had finally stopped. I should have seen it coming. You're unbelievable, I muttered, shaking my head. You call me selfish, but I've spent years cleaning up your disasters. I've been the one making sacrifices while you sit here, comfortably sucking the life out of everyone around you. Ethan's expression darkened. That's not fair. No, what's not fair, I cut in, voice rising, is that I worked my ass off to build a life for myself, and suddenly, I'm the bad guy for not letting you leech off me anymore. You didn't invite me to Christmas because I finally said no to being your personal ATM. His mouth opened, but no words came out. And my parents? Silence. That stung more than Ethan's betrayal ever could. You really believe that, don't you? My father finally said, his voice heavy with disappointment. That we don't care about you? That this is all about money? I let out a hollow laugh. Isn't it? Because the moment I stopped giving, you all stopped caring. Do you even hear yourselves? You let Ethan dictate whether or not I was welcome in this family, and you just went along with it. My mother's eyes welled up. Lucas, it's not like that. Then explain it to me, I said coldly, because it sure as hell feels like that. A long, painful silence stretched between us, and then Ethan smirked. Fine. You want to act like some big shot, like you're too good for us? Go ahead. But don't come crawling back when you realize you have nothing. Something inside me snapped. I exhaled slowly, forcing my hands to unclench. Then I turned to my parents. If you're okay with this, if this is the family you've chosen to have, then you've already made your choice. I turned on my heel and walked out. No one stopped me, and I didn't look back. The drive home was quiet, but inside my head, a storm was raging. I replayed the conversation over and over, dissecting every word, every silence. My own family had cast me out, not for some horrible crime, not because I had wronged them in any way, but because I had the audacity to stop funding Ethan's lifestyle, because I had chosen myself for once. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, my hands were trembling with barely contained anger. I walked inside, locked the door, and stood in the center of my living room, breathing heavily. The Christmas decorations I had put up, half-heartedly, optimistically, looked pathetic now. A lonely string of lights, a small tree, unopened gifts I had wrapped for my family. I sat down on the couch and just stared at the blinking lights. I had spent my entire life trying to be the good son, the reliable one, the one who could be counted on, no matter how unfair the expectations were. And now that I had finally stopped being their emergency fund, they had made it clear. I was expendable. I picked up my phone and hovered over the family group chat. My last message was still there from weeks ago. An enthusiastic, can't wait to see everyone for Christmas, sitting unanswered like a fool's hope. Then, as if on cue, my phone vibrated. A message from Ethan. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. Ethan, Mom and Dad are upset. You need to apologize. You overreacted. I blinked. I overreacted? For a moment, I just stared at the words. Then, with eerie calm, I typed out my response. Me. No. You're not my problem anymore. None of you are. Hope you all enjoy Christmas next year without me, too. I hit send and immediately left the group chat. Then, without hesitation, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I went to my banking app, scrolled through my recurring transfers, and canceled every single automatic payment linked to Ethan's expenses. The car insurance, the utilities, the extra cash I had been sending, just in case. Done. For years, I had been the one ensuring his family was taken care of. I had sacrificed for them while he lived recklessly, believing I would always be there to clean up his mess. But now, he was on his own. I exhaled slowly, feeling lighter than I had in years. And then, I did the final, most cathartic thing of all. I walked over to my Christmas tree, picked up the wrapped gifts with their neatly labeled tags, to Mom, to Dad, to Ethan's kids, and one by one, I tossed them into a trash bag. They didn't want me? Fine. They didn't get my kindness either. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No guilt-tripping calls from Mom. No fake check-ins from Dad. No frantic apologies from Ethan, because, of course, he never apologized. At first, it felt strange. Like I had stepped off a treadmill that had been running for years, and my body was still expecting motion. But then, it felt good. I woke up, went to work, came home, and for once, I wasn't constantly worrying about someone else's problems. I wasn't stressing about whether Ethan had paid his rent on time. I wasn't bracing myself for the next emotional ambush from my parents. I was just living. And then, on New Year's Eve, the storm finally came. My phone rang at exactly 11:30 p.m. Mom. I stared at the screen, debating. I could let it go to voicemail, pretend I was asleep, but some sick part of me wanted to know what she had to say. I answered. Lucas, she breathed, as if relieved I had picked up. Honey, we need to talk. I sat back, swirling my untouched glass of whiskey. Oh, now you want to talk? She sighed. Don't be like that, sweetheart. This has gone on long enough. We're family. I snorted. Funny. Didn't feel like family when you all sat around a table on Christmas and decided I didn't belong there. A pause. Then, a softer voice. Lucas. Ethan's struggling. I laughed, cutting her off. There it is. I was wondering how long it would take before you brought him up. Please, she said, voice tightening. I know you're upset, but he's having a hard time. The bills, the kids. You know how difficult things have been for him. He just needs a little help getting back on his feet. The audacity. I took a deep breath. No. Silence. Lucas, she said, as if I were a child refusing to eat his vegetables. You don't mean that. I do, I said, my voice calm. And if you call me again to ask for money, I'll block your number. Lucas, don't do this. Good night, Mom. I hung up, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely freed. I expected silence after that. Maybe a few more guilt-tripping texts, maybe some passive-aggressive comments from my dad about how family sticks together. But after that phone call, I was sure my mother had finally gotten the message. I was wrong, because 2 weeks later, I got a call from Ethan's wife, Mara. I almost didn't pick up. I had always liked Mara. She was quiet, polite, and had never once been rude to me. But she was married to Ethan, and that made me cautious. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I answered. Her voice was rushed, panicked. Lucas, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I didn't know who else to call. I frowned. What's wrong? A sharp inhale. Ethan's in trouble. Real trouble. I think you need to know. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Mara, I don't know what you want me to do. Your husband made it clear that I wasn't part of the family anymore. I know, she said quickly. But Lucas, it's bad. Really bad. He borrowed money from some people, and I think they're dangerous. He's been lying to me about it for months, and now I'm scared. I stiffened. What do you mean, dangerous? I mean, she whispered, her voice trembling. Men showed up at our house last night looking for him. When I told them he wasn't home, one of them just smiled. And then he said, tell him we'll be back soon. Goosebumps rose along my arms. This wasn't the usual Ethan's being a dumbass again kind of trouble. This was something else. Something worse. How much does he owe? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Mara hesitated. Then, in a barely audible whisper, she said, 30 grand. I nearly dropped my phone. 30 grand? I repeated, standing up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. Mara, are you serious? Where the hell did he even get that kind of loan? She made a choking sound, half a sob, half a breath. I don't know. He keeps saying it's fine, that he has a plan, but Lucas, he doesn't. And I have 2 kids to think about. I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers against my temple. This wasn't my problem. I had made my decision. I had walked away. But Mara and the kids? They weren't the ones who had done this. I sighed. Where's Ethan now? A pause. Then, she said the last thing I ever expected to hear. He's outside your apartment. I spun toward the window and felt my stomach drop. Because there he was, standing by his car, pacing, running his hands through his hair, looking like an absolute wreck. I clenched my jaw. I'll call you back. And then, against my better judgment, I opened my door. Ethan looked up instantly, his eyes wild. Lucas, man, you have to help me. I crossed my arms. Oh, last time I checked, I wasn't welcome in your life. Funny how that works. He groaned, rubbing his face. Look, I know I messed up, all right? But 30 grand. Ethan? I cut in, my voice sharp. What the hell were you thinking? He winced. I had no choice. I was drowning, man. I thought I could flip some investments, make a quick return. But then, I held up a hand. I don't care. I really don't. You did this to yourself. Lucas, please, he begged, stepping closer. I have a family. If I don't come up with the money, these guys, they're not just going to walk away. I stared at him. For the first time in my life, I saw him for exactly what he was. Not a struggling father. Not the golden child my parents adored. Just a man who had never learned to take responsibility for his own damn life. And I wasn't going to be his safety net anymore. You need 30 grand? I said finally. Then figure it out. I'm done saving you, Ethan. I mean it this time. He looked stunned, like he genuinely hadn't considered the possibility that I might say no. You don't mean that, he said, shaking his head. I smiled, cold, sharp. I do. And if those guys come looking for you at my place, I'll make sure the cops are here before they even step out of their car. His face paled. Good luck, I said, stepping back inside. And then, with finality, I shut the door in his face. I expected Ethan to call. Maybe he'd beg, maybe he'd rage, but he wouldn't let this go. He had never known how to handle the word no. But Ethan didn't call. Instead, 2 days later, I got a knock on my door at 2 a.m. At first, I thought I had imagined it. I wasn't expecting anyone, and it wasn't like I had a long list of people who'd show up unannounced. But then bang, bang, bang. My stomach clenched. I grabbed my phone and slowly made my way to the door, looking through the peephole. My blood ran cold. It wasn't Ethan. 2 men stood outside. One was tall, built like a bouncer, arms crossed over his chest. The other was shorter, wiry, with a smirk that sent a chill down my spine. I knew immediately who they were. I took a breath, steadied myself, and cracked the door open just enough to speak. Can I help you? The shorter guy grinned. You Lucas? I didn't answer. The tall guy spoke this time, his voice deep and measured. Your brother owes us a lot of money. I exhaled through my nose. Yeah, I heard. But that's his problem, not mine. The shorter one chuckled, shaking his head. See, that's not exactly how this works. Family means responsibility, you know? And from what we hear, you used to be real generous with Ethan. I clenched my jaw. The tall guy stepped forward slightly. We're not unreasonable men, Lucas. We're not asking for the whole 30 grand. We just need something. A sign of good faith. Let me make this easy for you, I said coldly. I'm not giving you a cent. And if you don't get off my doorstep, I'll make sure the cops come looking for you instead of Ethan. For the first time, the shorter man's smirk disappeared. Silence stretched between us. Then, with a slow nod, he stepped back. All right, he said easily. Guess we'll just have to find another way. And just like that, they walked away. I didn't move until I heard their car start and drive off. Then, I did the only thing I could do. I called Mara. She picked up on the first ring, her voice laced with exhaustion. Lucas? Mara, I said quickly. Listen to me. You and the kids need to leave. Now. She sucked in a breath. What? Why? They came to my apartment, I said, running a hand through my hair. They're looking for Ethan, but they're gonna start making examples out of people close to him. And that includes you. I could hear the fear in her silence. Mara, I pressed, do you have somewhere to go? She hesitated. Then, in a small voice, my sister. She lives a few hours away. Then pack a bag and go, I said. Right now. A shaky breath. Then, okay. I ended the call and stood there for a long time, staring at my phone. I should have let it go. Should have walked away. But I couldn't. Not when Mara and the kids were in danger because of him. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called the police. The next few hours were a blur. I told them everything. Ethan's debt, the men who came looking for him, the threats. I gave them descriptions, my security camera footage, everything. And then, I sent a message to Ethan. Me. They came to my apartment. I warned you. The cops are looking for you now. You're out of chances. I didn't wait for a reply. Because for the first time in my life, I truly didn't care if Ethan got himself destroyed. And something told me, this time, he would. The morning after I called the cops, I woke up to a dozen missed calls from Ethan. I ignored them all. By noon, my voicemail was full. His messages started out angry, cursing me out, calling me a traitor, saying I had ruined his life. Then they turned desperate. Lucas, please. I didn't mean for this to happen. You have to help me. No, I really didn't. Instead, I turned my attention to Mara. She had made it safely to her sister's house. She sounded exhausted but relieved, her voice steadier than the night before. I can't believe this is my life, she muttered. Running away in the middle of the night because my husband is a goddamn idiot. You did the right thing, I said. This isn't your mess to fix. She let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, well, I sure as hell married into it. We talked for a little while longer. She had already contacted a lawyer, was looking into divorce options. Good. She deserved better than Ethan. The kids did too. But while she was figuring out her escape, Ethan was spiraling. By the time I checked my texts again, I saw one that made my stomach tighten. Ethan, they took my car. I stared at it for a long moment. Then, another message. They said if I don't pay up by tomorrow, I'm done. Lucas, please, man. I have nowhere to go. I could almost picture it. Ethan, standing outside his apartment, realizing for the first time in his life that no one was going to bail him out this time. And I felt nothing. Because this was his consequence. I set my phone down and got on with my day. 2 days later, Mara called me again. They arrested him, she said, sounding more exhausted than relieved. I sat up. Wait, what? Ethan, she said. He got desperate. Tried to steal from his job. They caught him on camera taking money from the register. I exhaled slowly, rubbing my temples. Jesus Christ. They're holding him, she continued. No bail. And Lucas. Her voice grew heavier. The men he owed money to? The police think they're connected to bigger things. They might use him to get to them. My stomach twisted. Ethan, for all his arrogance, was not built for this. He had never been good at handling pressure. Never been able to hold his own when things got serious. And now? He was just a pawn in a game way bigger than him. I should have felt something, but all I felt was relief that I wasn't the one cleaning up his mess anymore. So what happens now? I asked. Mara sighed. They're charging him. At least 2 felonies, maybe more depending on what they find. I nodded, exhaling slowly. Good. A pause. Then, quietly, she said, I don't think he's coming back from this one. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Yeah, I said finally. I don't think so either. Ethan's trial was set for 3 months later. By then, the full picture had come together. His unpaid debts, his theft at work, and, worst of all, his indirect ties to a criminal operation that had no patience for screw-ups. He wasn't just some deadbeat with a gambling problem. He was a liability. And the people he owed? They weren't the kind to forgive. The last time I saw him was in court. I hadn't planned to go, but Mara asked if I'd be there. Not for Ethan, but for her and the kids. So I went, if only to see what remained of my brother after all of this. And what I saw wasn't Ethan, the golden child. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him, like the weight of his own stupidity had finally caught up to him. His once cocky smirk was gone, replaced with something hollow, For the first time in our lives, he wasn't above consequences. When the judge read the verdict, guilty on all charges, he barely reacted. Maybe because, deep down, he had always known this was coming. I watched as they led him away in handcuffs, his head low, his shoulders slumped, and I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, no sense of loss, because Ethan had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. Life moved on. Mara finalized the divorce and got full custody of the kids. She started a new job, found a smaller place, and finally, started building a life that wasn't weighed down by Ethan's destruction. My parents tried to reach out a few more times. At first, it was more of the same. Lucas, don't let your brother rot in prison. Family forgives. Then it shifted. You've changed. You used to care about us. And finally, when they realized I wasn't coming back, they stopped trying. That was when I knew. They never really cared about me, just what I could do for them. So, for the first time in my life, I let them go. I blocked their numbers, moved to a new place, and started living for myself. And you know what? I didn't miss them. Not the guilt, not the expectations, not the exhaustion of carrying a family that had never carried me back. Ethan would serve 5 years. By the time he got out, he'd have nothing left. Not his marriage, not his kids, not the safety net that had once caught him every time he fell. But that was his story to live. Mine was just beginning. And for the first time, it was finally mine.